All right, y'all. Biblical DNA. I'm back, and finally, we have the drop of the new paper, whole genome ancestry of an old kingdom Egyptian. Brought to you by Biblical DNA. This is July 2nd, 2025. All right. The executive summary. First whole genome sequence of an old kingdom Egyptian male, a Norat individual, timeline 2855 to 2570 BCE, age of the pyramids, third, fourth dynasty. Dual ancestry, 77.6% North African Neolithic, 22.4% Eastern Fertile Crescent, Y-DNA, E1B1B1B2B, ntDNA, I / N1A1B2. So something in between. I've seen that he belongs to I9. So I9 would have originated in West Asia. Phenotype, brown eyes and hair, dark to black skin. Now remember, dark to black skin, the same thing with the people in the Levant also had the same skin pigmentation, also intermediate. Why? Because these people were outdoors, they were outside majority of the day. Introduction, historical context, location, Nararat site, 265 kilometers south of Cairo, period, early dynastic to old kingdom. Radiocarbon date, 2855 to 2570 BCE, estimated age 44 to 64 years. Height 157 to 161 centimeters. Burial and preservation, buried in ceramic pot in rock cut tomb, no artificial mummification, exceptional DNA preservation, enabled whole genome sequencing, scientific breakthrough for ancient Egyptian genomics. Lifestyle and diet. Heavy physical labor indicators, Potter hypothesis, osteoarthritis, dental wear, high status burial despite labor intensive life, diet wheat, barley, terrestrial animal protein raised in the hot, dry Nile Valley, isotope analysis. I want to mention right there when it says wheat, barley, terrestrial animal protein. First of all, a lot of this stuff came from the Levant with the Natufian culture leading into the Neolithic, pre-Potter Neolithic B culture. And what this represents is the migration that the Epopolithic Natufian culture migrated from West Asia down into the Arabian Peninsula into Northeast Africa. They brought along with them during that time leading from the Epopolithic to the Bronze Age, they would have had different migrations bringing such things as goats, figs, and different crops that originated in the Levant. So just to give the listener a good idea of when these crops and different animals would have been brought to the from the Levant into Northeast Africa. Genetic lineages, Y-DNA and mtDNA. Y-DNA E1B1B1B2B, found in North Africa and West Asia. Not only that, a lot of Arabians have this haplogroup. And I got a surprise for y'all on Y-Food, because when you see what this individual matches with, is more than likely Saudi Arabians. Yes, that's right. This individual genetically matches up with people from Saudi Arabia today, modern times. So genetically, his paternal ancestors would have been in where? Saudi Arabia. mtDNA, I-N1A1B2, North Africa and West Asia. suggests continuity with modern regional populations. Ancestral components: North African Neolithic, 77.6%, plus or minus 3.8%. Eastern Fertile Crescent, 22.4%, plus or minus 3.8%. Two-way admixture model, best statistically fit. So guess what that means, y'all? No East African, no Sub-Saharan African. Bookmark that. And if people want to say, oh, what about the Iberian Mauritians? Didn't they carry Sub-Saharan African? What are you talking about? These people were basal Eurasians. They came from West Asia. That's where their autosomia is coming from, not from East Africans and not from some Sub-Saharan Africans. So those claiming that stuff, you're wrong. Evidence for migration: genetic affinity with Neolithic Mesopotamia. F4 statistics, Z equals 3.2. Supports model of active migration, not just cultural diffusion. Lack of Sub-Saharan African ancestry. No ancestry from Mota, Ethiopia, or other Sub-Saharan genomes establishes baseline before later southern gene flow into Egypt. Phenotypic predictions: eyes, brown, 0.999. Hair, brown, 0.999. Skin, dark to black, 0.999. Based on modern length pigmentation markers. Comparison: third intermediate period. Later Egyptians have more Levantine ancestry, 64.5%, linked to late Bronze Age collapse and Canaanite movements. Modern Egyptian ancestry DNA, mixed ancestry: Narat, 32 to 75%, Moroccan, Morocco, 29 to 73%, Levant, Bronze Age, 12 to 57%, Sub-Saharan Africa or Sub-Saharan Ethiopia, Congo, 5 to 56%. Modern Egyptians equals long-term admixture and migration. Conclusion: Notarat genome, first complete ancient Egyptian genome, confirms dual ancestry, North African and Fertile Crescent. Phenotype: dark skin, brown eyes, hair. Dynamic population history over millennia. All right, biblical DNA, and I'm back on whole genome ancestry of an old kingdom Egyptian. This biblical DNA, also known as Dan, and this is July 2nd, 2025. Let's get into this. Executive summary. First whole genome sequence of an old kingdom Egyptian male from Nawarat individual. Timeline: 2855 to 2570 BCE, age of the pyramids. So this is third, fourth dynasty period. Dual ancestry: 77.6% North African Neolithic, 22.4% Eastern Fertile Crescent. Y DNA: E1B, 1B, 1B, 2B, ntDNA I/N1A, 1B2. Now, we're going to get into the paper. This is a breakdown from what I gathered by overviewing the paper. Phenotype: brown eyes and hair. Skin pigmentation: dark to black skin. Introduction, historical context. Location, Nawarat, site 265 kilometers south of Cairo. Period, early dynastic to old kingdom. Radiocarbon date, 2855 to 2570 BCE. Estimated age, 44 to 64 years. Height, 157 to 161 centimeters. Burial and preservation. Buried in ceramic pot and rock cut tomb. No artificial mummification. Exceptional DNA preservation. Enabled whole genome sequencing. Now, that being said, there was a few samples, and this was the only single sample that was able to be sequenced. So that's very important. Scientific breakthrough for ancient Egyptian genomics. Lifestyle and diet. Heavy physical labor indicators Potter hypothesis. Osteoarthritis and dental wear. High status, burial despite labor-intensive life. Diet, wheat, barley, terrestrial, animal protein. Very important there. Going back to the Epopolithic, Natufian culture into the Levant Neolithic, pre-Potter Neolithic B culture, these people had the wheat and barley. A lot of the religious, the Bible, the biblical stories of how the New Year starts and everything is based off of the barley, if I'm not mistaken, leading into Passover and whatnot. Unleavened bread. Going back to Egypt, where they had to leave out of an exodus out of Egypt, which isn't historical, by the way. Very, very, very biblical. Going back to the wheat and barley, the Natufian culture started cultivating the wheat and barley. This also proves the evidence that these people were migrating from West Asia down into the Arabian Peninsula, Southwest Asia, into Northeast Africa. Very important. What did they also bring? Around 6,000 to 4,000 BCE, they also brought goats, figs, which came from where? West Asia, folks. That's why, because they were migrating back and forth through those lands. Raised in the hot, dry Nile Valley, isotope analyses. Genetic lineages, Y-DNA and mtDNA. Y-DNA, E1B1B1, B2B, North Africa and West Asia. Very important. When you look at the matches, and I'm going to bring the Y full after I'm finished. When you look at the matches, majority of the matches that are found are going to be found in Saudi Arabia, West Asia, the Levant. A lot of the matches on the Y chromosome is found throughout those regions, including East Africa. mtDNA, I, N1A, 1B2, North Africa, West Asia, suggests continuity with modern regional populations. Say that again. Suggests continuity with modern regional populations, meaning those places around Egypt still carry these haplogroups on the Y-DNA and mtDNA. So the Y and the X, they still in those regional areas. Ancestral components, North African Neolithic, 77.6%, plus or minus 3.8%. Eastern Fertile Crescent, 22.4%, plus or minus 3.8%. Two-way admixture model, best statistical fit. Evidence for migration. Genetic affinity with Neolithic Mesopotamia, F4 statistics, z-score is equal to 3.2. Supports model of active migration, not just cultural diffusion. Diffusion, no. Migration, yes. Active migration from when? All the way dating back, chronology, back to Epopolithic, Natufian culture, and the Levant, Neolithic, pre-Potter Neolithic B culture. These people were mixed. Mixed with who? Anatolian Neolithic farmers, and also the Natufian culture. Going back to the Natufian culture, you had them admixture with the Iberian Marusian. And the Iberian Marusians didn't carry Natufian culture admixture. It was the Natufian culture that carried Iberian Marusian admixture. Going into the Chalcolithic to the Bronze Age, you have different population replacements, people coming in the Chalcolithic from Iran. Yep, Iran, the Zagros, those people came into the Levant. Migration, migration, migration. Different people bringing different admixtures. Lack of sub-Saharan ancestry. No ancestry from Malta, Ethiopia, or other sub-Saharan genomes establishes baseline before later southern gene flow into Egypt. Yeah. How about that? Phenotypic predictions. Eyes, brown 0.999, hair brown 0.999, skin dark to black 0.999. Now, I can bring this up. The Natufian culture had the same skin pigmentation of dark to black skin also. And going into the Levant pre-pottery Neolithic B culture, they also had the same thing, but there was intermediate skin pigmentation in that region. And the paper suggests that, yeah, that there was slightly a chance that he had intermediate skin pigmentation. But the thing is, these people were outdoors. So the whole concept, the ancient Egyptians were black. Black on what? What are you talking about? Black. The Bedouins, if you look at the pigmentation, if you look at their DNA, guess what their skin pigmentation can be depicted as? Dark to black. Do they look black people? No. Are they sub-Saharan Africans? No. They're Bedouins. They're freaking West Asiatics that freaking always semi-nomadic people that were herding their goats and their lambs and sheep and all that stuff around the Levant into the Arabian Peninsula based on modern linked pigmentation markers. All right. Comparison, third intermediate period. Later Egyptians had more Levantine ancestry, 64.5%, linked to late Bronze Age collapse and Canaanite movements. Modern Egyptian ancestry DNA, mixed ancestry, Naurarat, 32 to 75%, Morocco, Yemen, 29 to 73%, Levant, Bronze Age, 12 to 57%, Sub-Saharan Ethiopia, Congo, 5 to 56%. Modern Egyptians equals long-term admixture and migration. Conclusion, Naurarat genome, first complete ancient Egyptian genome, confirms dual ancestry, North African plus Fertile Crescent, phenotype, dark skin, brown eyes, hair, dynamic population history over millennia. All right. Wasn't that awesome, y'all? And a lot of people is going to be like, well, they could have been related to the ancient, black people could be related. What are you talking about? Nowhere in there does that suggest that at all. No, it don't suggest that at all. So for people claiming, oh, they were related to black people, no, they're related to the populations around them up into the Saudi Arabia and to the Levant and whatnot. All right. I want to bring up something real quick. Let's go ahead and get this paper fixed. Real quick, while I do that, I want to show something real quick. I want to show this real quick. All right, so this was done by Ted Kendall, right? So this is the sample right here of where the Norat sample would be located. This is the Y, the big Y that they put them at was E-Y222180. As you can see, Saudi Arabia, I don't know if this is gonna have to be replaced, but even given that, regardless of when this gets, I don't know if it's gonna have to get fixed or what. I don't know what the difference between the paper, what Moritz Jacobs, what she found versus what Ted Kendall found and other people, because they all placed them under this specific E1B1B1 S&P. They didn't have them under EM123 or EM8. They didn't have them under that. They have them under this one. So I don't know why exactly. Where's the contradiction? And for those that are interested, this is the same. Like this is the same one that Albert Einstein belongs to. I think it's around. I know it's under E-Z830, E-Z827, but I don't know as far. I would have to look it up for y'all, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to that. In fact, I would say it's around this region right here. It's around that. That's the difference right there. Something in one of these mutations, one of these S&Ps is where they're different at. But yeah, Albert Einstein belongs to this haplogroup as far as going to Z827, I think Z830 too. But let's get into the paper. Whole genome ancestry of an old kingdom Egyptian. Moritz, I guess she got married because she wasn't Jacob's before, so congratulations to her. That's awesome. We've been waiting for this paper for a long time, and it finally got published. So I'm happy, honestly, and I hope this gets some clarity and this opens up for ancient Egyptian samples to be sequenced in Egypt, especially with the whole Egyptian Genome Project. For those that are brand new to this, there's going to be a lot of ancient Egyptian DNA to be published, as far as resequencing of the old royal kingdom mummies, such as Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, Ramses III. All those samples are still going to be resequenced, and they probably already have. It just, that research hasn't been published yet, but we're waiting on it. That's why there's a whole timeline for the Egyptian Genome Project. So for the abstract, it says ancient Egyptian society flourished for millennia, reaching its peak during the dynastic period, approximately 3150 to 30 BCE. However, owing to poor DNA preservation, questions about regional interconnectivity over time have not been addressed because whole genome sequencing has not yet been possible. Here we sequence a 2 times coverage whole genome from an adult male Egyptian excavated at Norat, radiocarbon dated to 2855 to 2570 circa BCE. He lived a few centuries after Egyptian unification, bridging the early dynastic and old kingdom periods. The body was what is that? Entered? I guess it's enter. I don't even know what that means. Entered. Bury. Okay, so bury body in the graver tomb. Okay, enter. First time I've ever seen the usage of that word. And a ceramic pot within a rock cut tomb, potentially contributing to the DNA preservation. Most of his genome is best represented by North African Neolithic ancestry among available sources at present. Yet approximately 20% of his genetic ancestry can be traced to genomes representing the Eastern Fertile Crescent, including Mesopotamia and surrounding regions. This genetic affinity is similar to the ancestry appearing in Anatolia and the Levant during the Neolithic and Bronze Age. Chronology, 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 chronology. I can't beat that word enough into religious people's heads, to pseudo, scientific people's heads. Chronology, chronology, chronology. You got to know chronology when you're talking about the Bible and when you're talking about actual history, and not that pseudo history that a lot of people fall into. Although more genomes are needed to fully understand the genomic diversity of early Egyptians, our results indicate that contact between Egypt and the Eastern Fertile Crescent were not limited to objects and imagery, such as domesticated animals and plants, as well as writing systems, but also encompass human migration. What is it? What did it encompass, y'all? Human migration. Okay, and the chronology, human migration with the chronology. So going back to the Natufian culture, the Levant pre-pottery Neolithic culture, which were a mixed people of Anatolian Neolithic farmer. Yes, going from there to the calculated, I think it's I don't want to misspeak, but it starts with the G Gasan culture, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Gosselin culture, something like that. Anyways, the people with the Y-DNA of T-L208, if I'm not mistaken, the ones that came from Iran. So those ones, yes, those ones came and admixture events occurred. So for those that don't know, encompass human migration. Different people came from different places during a period of time to make the ancient Egyptians. For thousands of years, the Egyptian dynastic civilization, approximately 3150 to 30 BCE, developed monumental architectural, sophisticated technology, and relatively stable belief systems, becoming the longest lasting civilization known. Following the political unification of the northern and southern regions of Egypt, Lower and Upper Egypt, at the end of the 4th millennium BCE, the Old Kingdom, 2686 to 2125 BCE, witnessed considerable advances, including the construction of the first step pyramid complex of King Zasser and the Great Pyramid of Giza, built by King Khufu. Hey, 93, what's up, bro? Finally, the drop of what we've been waiting for, right? Like, it's crazy because I just watched Chris MVP's Harris video and saying, oh, they're black, they're black, they're black. Like, bro, stop the nonsense. When are people gonna realize that phenotype, like the skin pigmentation, the Bedouins are dark skinned, the Saudi Arabians, you go to Saudi Arabia, dark skinned. This girl I met at Publix 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I told her, I'm like, where from Saudi Arabia you from? She was like, how do you know I was from Saudi Arabia? So I can tell. She's like, wow, that's amazing. Nobody's ever been able to do that. I said, I can do it. I can, it's not too difficult for me. I can just look at some people and like, you got to be from this area. And she was right. And guess what her skin tone was? Dark to black. Dark to black. She was dark to black. But oh no, they got to be black people. Got to be somehow related to African Americans. Nope, they ain't got nothing to do with y'all. I mean, unless you can prove genetically that your Y chromosome was J, or maybe an old E1B1A that never went through the sub-Saharan, the transatlantic sub-Saharan slave trade, or the Arabs, the Saharan slave trade, maybe. But guess what? Guess what? Phenotypically, those people in that those regional populations cluster together and they look genetically the same. But hey, What can I say? The population has been considered to be of local origin with limited input from neighboring regions, yet more recent archaeological evidence shows that trade connections existed across the Fertile Crescent since at least the 6th millennium BCE, if not earlier, with the advent of the Neolithic package, such as domesticated animals and plants. Chronology, human migration, make it happen. Cultural exchange continued to develop through the late 4th millennium BCE with the growing Sumerian civilization of Mesopotamia, which, by the way, hey, I reached out to the author, Mark something, Artwell, I think it is. Yeah, Mark Artwell. There's going to be a paper. There's research that's already taken place, and it's going to be published in peer-reviewed scientific journal. It's going to be published, and the DNA is going to be around the Sumerian, like the Sumerians, probably Assyrians, maybe Egyptian samples, because they have those samples up in Iraq. They have those samples, and he and Mark Artwell. There was an Amazon or Netflix. I think it's Netflix. There was a documentary on there, and Mark Artwell talks in there, and he speaks about something like that. But I emailed him, and he told me, there's more. He can't release all the details, but he told me that there's more, and I want to respect him because he's a researcher, and it's his stuff, but just look forward to Mark Otwell's research in that area, Mesopotamia. This period overlaps with the appearance of additional innovations in Egypt, such as the pottery wheel, and the earliest evidence of hieroglyphic writing in the form of ivory tags and tomb Uj at Abdos, dated 3320 to 3150 BCE. Our knowledge of ancient Egyptians has increased through decades of bioarchaeological analyses, including dental morphological studies on their relatedness to other populations in North Africa and West Asia. However, the lack of ancient genomes, particularly for the early periods of Egyptian dynastic history, remains a barrier to our understanding of population continuity and gene flow in the region. Although individuals from ancient Egypt were subjected to the first effort to isolate ancient DNA, direct genome sequencing has remained elusive because of the challenging regional DNA preservation conditions. So far, only 3 individuals from Asir el-Malek have yielded nuclear DNA, all posting dating their emergence of dynastic Egypt by thousands of years from 787 BCE to 23 CE. Moreover, these are not complete genome sequences, but are limited to approximately 90,000 to 400,000 target enriched genome types. Over the millennia spanning the dynastic period, Egypt witnessed several wide-ranging wars, occupation by foreign rulers, and dramatic episodes of internal political collapse. First, second, and third intermediate periods. Together, these processes may have substantially altered or reshaped the overall genetic structure and ancestry of the Egyptian population. Here, we present a whole genome sequence of an ancient Egyptian individual, 2.02 times coverage. Supplementary table 1 recovered from a necropolis and at Nerurat. So this is the sample right here. There goes your chronologies for those that are chronology illiterate. There you go. Give me a second. I got a charge. All right. The Nurat individual. Nurat is located near the village of Beni Hassan, 265 kilometers south of Cairo. The radiocarbon dating of the skeletal remains showed that the Nurat individual died between 2855 and 2570 BCE, 95.4% probability, which overlaps with the early dynastic and Old Kingdom periods. This results supports the initial archaeological assessments that material culture and funerary practices at the site were consistent with those of the third and fourth dynasties of the Old Kingdom. Now, for those that made it this long, thank you so much. I know I gave a summary from at the beginning of the video, but this just shows dedication that you're willing to go into the paper. I know the reason why I do that breakdown at the beginning of the videos, because I know some people have short attention spans, ADHD, ADD. I get it. Trust me. I get it. Serving in the military and army, I get it. The body was placed in a large pottery vessel inside a rock-cut tomb. This treatment would have ordinarily been reserved for individuals of a higher social class relative to others at the site, as observed elsewhere during the early dynastic period and at the Old Kingdom royal cemeteries near the city of Memphis. Although acknowledging known limitations in predicting phenotypic traits in understudied populations, the Nurat individual is predicted to have had brown eyes, brown hair, and skin mutation ranging from dark to black skin, with a lower probability of intermediate skin color. Again, this is the same thing with the Bronze and Iron Age samples in the Levant. They also had the dark skin pigmentation, and some of them had intermediate skin pigmentation. Some of them did have dark to black skin pigmentation. But again, majority of these peoples, what were they doing? They were outdoors. They were semi-nomadic people. They were working with their hands, not like we're doing nowadays, sitting in the house all the time or indoors. We do everything indoors for the most part. During those times, they had to be outside. I'd say like 90% of the time, like they were outside of not being underneath a tent or in shade. They were pretty much out, like direct sun contact, and their diet would have reflected would have been more like, fish and high vitamin D, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they would have had a diet, not just wheat and barley, but more heavy protein diet and whatnot. Compared to us now, most people eating chips and stuff like that, like processed foods and whatnot, garbage. But back to the reading. The individual is genetically male, XY sex chromosomes, consistent with the expression of standard skeletal features. Are further astrological examination revealed that he would have stood 157.4 to 160.5 centimeters tall. He lived to an advanced age for the time, approximately 44 to 64 years. The upper end of this range is the most probable, as evidenced by his heavily worn teeth and age-related osteoarthritis in most joints and vertebrae. In some cases, severe. This and various activity-induced musculoskeletal indicators of stress revealed that he experienced an extended period of physical labor, seemingly in contrast to his high status tomb burial. The patterns of osteoarthritis and stress indicators further implied the form of physical activity that he routinely engaged in, which some researchers maintain can provide clues concerning occupation. In this case, although circumstantial, they are not inconsistent with those of a potter as depicted in an ancient Egyptian imagery. Estimates of biological affinity based on dental morphological features and cranial measurements parallel the genomic results. More detailed information about the Norat individual is presented in supplementary information section 2 with a facial depiction in supplementary information section 3. All that. All right, so here's a PCA of where Norat. So this is Norat right here. NUE001. And we see that he's clustered between, again, y'all, chronology. Stress it enough, chronology. One more time, chronology. You gotta understand chronology. So in migrations, people don't believe migrations happen. They happen. Get over it. It happened. So most people don't want to believe that though. They want to think that these populations never migrated and whatnot. They did. So here we go. So this individual clustered between Levant Neolithic, Morocco Middle Neolithic, Egypt Third Intermediate Period. So what's these little dots? Okay, here we go. Northeast Africa, Levant, Arabian Peninsula. Let me see if I can. There we go. So majority of his admixture looks like Moroccan, Middle Neolithic. Yeah, Middle Neolithic. That salmon, that pink salmon color looks like it came from Iran, the Zagros, and the blue looks. It looks ooh, that one's good. Anatolia Neolithic. What's the green? I don't see the green one on here. I guess it's Northwest Africa, but I don't see. Okay, I don't know. Mesopotamia Neolithic. So what it looks like to me is they're definitely what, like I broke down in the paper and the review at the beginning, the power slides, is that a two-way statistical comparison at four. That's the best way they're doing is two-way. So they're using two admixtures as the best fit for this individual. Yeah, because it looks like they're saying that he belongs to Moroccan Middle Neolithic and Mesopotamian Neolithic. Again, no sub-Saharan African DNA nor East African Malta DNA. So he didn't belong. He didn't belong to them. Mm, mm, mm. All right, I see. Right, I wanted to touch up on this one. All results are consistent with having grown in the hot, dry climate of the Nile Valley, where VSMOW indicates Vienna standard mean ocean water consuming, and this is what I was talking about, like the omnivorous diet based on terrestrial animal protein and plants such as wheat and barley. Um, Go ahead. Typical for Egyptians until the Coptic period, and elevated. I don't know what that. I should know what this means, but I don't. Value frequently observed in isotope studies of ancient Egyptians may have been caused by the arid environment, eating foods raised on manured fields, Kemet, manure fields, the black soil, but manure fields too. You mix that black soil around the Nile Valley or Nile River. You mix it with manure; it's really fertile. And or inclusion of Nile fish in the diet. Ancient genome sequencing. Seven cementum enriched DNA extracts were paired into single-stranded DNA sequencing libraries and screened on an Illumina platform. 5 of these libraries showed degradation patterns expected for ancient DNA with evidence of elevated rates of cytosine and thymine. Substitutions at the first base of the sequence alignments, more than 30% in low contamination estimates for both nuclear and mitochondrial DNA, 0 to 3%. The remaining libraries were discarded because of elevated contamination estimates. The two libraries Y11475 and Y11477 with the highest proportion of reads mapping to the reference human genome 6.0% and 32 or 3.2% of all sequences were further sequenced on Illumina, NovaSeq 6000 and NovaSeq X platforms to generate a total of 8.3 billion, 2 times 100 sequence repairs. Woo. Trying to understand. Okay, let me see what this. Okay. So that's the Nuerot sample. That's the ancient Egyptian sample right there. Early Bronze Age. I'm seeing kingdom. Okay. Hmm. All right. Get this part. The Nuerite individual is genetically most similar to present-day people in North Africa and West Asia, which is consistent with the results from admixture clustering. The mitochondrial DNA haplogroup I, N1A1B2, and chromosome Y, haplogroup E1B1B1B2B haplogroups of the Norat individual are most common in present-day North African and West Asian groups, consistent with the whole genome affinities. Furthermore, the Norat genome had no extended runs of homozygosity above 4 centimeters, indicating no recent or cons- I don't know what that is. Consanguinity refers to the state of being descended from a okay. All right. Ancestor of the Neurat genome. We use the QP-ATOM framework to model the genetic ancestry components that best represent the Neurat genome using a fully rotating model competition approach in which a set of candidate populations are iteratively used as sources to construct one source to two source and three source population ancestry model, whereas the remaining candidates are set as outgroup right populations. Okay. We use a set of 13 populations from Neolithic and Chalcolithic, West Asia, North Africa, and the North Mediterranean region that predate the Nurat individual as potential sources. No single source model fitted the maximum p-value observed equals 2.39 times 10 with the power of -6 for a model with Morocco Middle Neolithic as a single source. Instead, a single two-source model p equals 0.12 met the significance criteria of p is greater than 0.05, which consisted of a mixture of 77.6% plus or minus 3.8%. Very important. Ancestry represented by the genomes from the Middle Neolithic Moroccan site of Skerat Razi, dated to 4,780 to 4,230 BCE, Morocco Middle Neolithic, and the remainder most closely related to genomes from 9,000 to 8,000 BCE Neolithic Mesopotamia, 22.4% plus or minus 3.8%. Now this is interesting because I think this is the first paper that really goes like uses the Middle Neolithic Moroccan sample from. I'm pretty sure that's like this is like one of the first papers I've read. If this not your first paper, or you can cite back another paper that's done that, please let me know in the comment section. Because I think this is the first paper I've seen use those samples like that. In addition, 3 source models showed similar ancestry proportions, but with a minor contribution of a third ancestry component represented by genomes from the Neolithic, Chalcolithic Levant, 4.7 plus or minus 8.2% at p equals 0.11 and 1.1 plus or minus 8.7% at p equals 0.07 respectively. All right, I'm trying to understand. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. They're using the two-way model. Like that's the best statistical understanding is using two-way admixture. And yeah, when I do the admix tools too, it's usually that case. You have to figure out it's if you don't know statistics, you're not going to understand this stuff. Like you have to have a basic understanding of statistics because when you use those admixtures, you have to get the right fit. And sometimes it can only be 2 or 3 populations you can use for admixture. If you try to use more than that, it's just going to be a mess. So that's what they found here in this case. All accepted QP-ATOM showed the presence of ancestry related to Middle Neolithic, Morocco, and the Nurat genome. Therefore, our results could indicate shared ancestry across North Africa during this period, and consequently that local Egyptian Neolithic populations contributed genetically to the early dynastic and Old Kingdom people as indicated from a material culture and biological or bioarchaeological analysis. However, because the genomes from the Middle Neolithic Morocco have previously been modeled to comprise both Ibero-Mauritian-like and Levantine Neolithic ancestry components, which we collaborated, the affinity to Levantine Neolithic groups could reflect several migration events. Again, reflect several migration events. So, those people, Soy Kieta, I think the other one I heard before speak against migrations and whatnot. What's that man's name? Oh, those that watch this video and watch Brother Garfield knows who I'm talking about. But in 93, if you still in the chat, you know who I'm talking about. You can say the name in the chat if you want to, but I don't know why they don't see like these migrations of people coming in and out of North Africa and West Asia. It blows my mind. Anyways, to explore these alternative hypotheses in detail, further ancient DNA studies on pre-Bronze Age genomes from North Africa are required. Yeah, exactly. They need a Neolithic sample from Egypt, the Nile Valley. They would need an Egyptian sample that's dated to the Neolithic, or yeah, I think the Neolithic would be good enough. Maybe Chalcolithic, but I think the Neolithic would be good enough. That would be really, really sufficient as far as seeing if the genetics really changed from the Neolithic to Chalcolithic to Bronze Age. And they can get an understanding of probably a better admixture breakdown if that they had that component. So if they had a Nile Valley Neolithic component, I think that would help, and they can see if it's continuity. So if it's continuity, that means they've been there since the Neolithic or prior to the Epapolithic, to the Neolithic, to the Chalcolithic, to the Bronze Age. And so I think that's definitely very important to have further ancient DNA studies on the pre-Bronze Age genomes of North Africa, specifically Nile Valley. The second genetic ancestry component detected in the Nuerat individual is most closely related to Neolithic Mesopotamians out of the potential sources included in the model competition. To further examine the putative affinity to Neolithic Mesopotamia, we computed a series of F4 statistics testing whether a set of groups share more derived alleles with the Nuerat than with Middle Neolithic Morocco in the form F4. Here, X represents the rotating sources of the QP atom model with the addition of Levantine Paleolithic, Anatolian Paleolithic, and Bronze Age Levantine genomes. The statistic was maximized and statistically significant with Neolithic Mesopotamia as X, Z equals 3.2. The affinity is also seen in the statistic F4, which is positive for all test populations X, consistent with an ancestry affinity between the individual from Norat and Neolithic Mesopotamia with Z scores greater than 2% or 2 for all except Zagros and Caucasus groups and Chalcolithic and Bronze Age Levantine groups. I want to bring up something real quick. So I actually did it. I use a few different, this is the G25 coordinates for this individual from 3rd, 4th dynasty, Egypt. And these are the sources. And this is the distance I got. So the closest was Arabia Ancient, Maghreb East Ancient, Ammonite, Israelite, Armenian. I mean, there is close. It's distancing further away. I'm gonna show you a different admixture tool also. But look at y'all, Arabian Ancient. I mean, Southwest Asian, North. I think Northwest or Northeast, North African, a little bit of East African, and some noise. I mean, it's barely any East African DNA, like Sub-Saharan African, East African. It's barely any. This is one that I always use. This is a good one too. Let me see what this one shows. So we have Sub-Saharan African, Morocco, Neolithic, Morocco, Neolithic. So this is more North African, an admixture tool. Uh-oh. Did I just mess up? I think so. Give me a second, y'all. Yeah, so I mean, what do y'all think though about this paper? Do you like the results? You know, how do y'all feel about the paper? That's something I'm interested in hearing from the people that watch this video. So please do leave your comments. Is it what you expected? Is it not what you expected? I know a lot of us that are interested in this, we got like a free understanding of what the results were going to be. They were close. I don't know why there's different results from people that did it themselves, like that are, you know, either geneticists or genealogists, and they're really skilled. Maybe data scientists. I don't know exactly why they got the admixtures they got or the haplogroups they got. But yeah, I mean, just please let me know what do you think about the result. So this one right here is exactly, or it's very similar to what we have. I think the difference is that they don't have a Neolithic Mesopotamian source to use. So I think that would be distancing closer. It would cluster closer, or, you know, it would be a better fit for this calculator. But since they don't have that, it's showing Uran hunter, Caucasus hunter gatherer, steppe pastoralist. Again, it has a sub-Saharan African component, but it's not showing sub-Saharan African. So I think this calculator right here is great, phenomenal. It's exactly what the paper has. This sample is similar to the Levant, so it's similar to the Natufian culture and Levant pre-pottery Neolithic B culture. But like I said, I think with the Mesopotamian Neolithic sample, I think this would be legit. Like that would be the perfect one to use. Let's do another one. East Mediterranean Neolithic. So yeah, I mean, this should be at like 0.02 or 0.3 or something like that, 0.4, and it seems to be distancing away from these samples. But we can see and see this one. That's it right there. That's the Mesopotamia Neolithic sample right here. So it's showing 70.4% Levant Neolithic, 13.2% Africa North, 5.8% Iran Neolithic, 5.2% Mesopotamia Neolithic, 3.8% Africa Southeast, 1% Pontic Caspian steppe east, and noise of Americas. This one would be good, I think. Let's see what this shows. See, this is better. This is a better, and obviously this is from the these are this from the samples from Saudi Arabia. Yeah, but this one, these ones cluster closer. This is in closer to this sample from the third, fourth dynasty, Egypt, and it just shows, you know, the regional population affinities these the sample shares. This is a perfect match right here. Wow. Let's see this. This sample right here in the tooth. Okay, so that I'm, and that's another thing. I wonder if they use that sample. It's I0861. Let me see something, y'all. I want to make sure they put something real quick. Data set. So it doesn't look like, if I got this right, it doesn't look like they use that sample. I'm trying to see something real quick before I show what I'm looking at right now. Yeah, it doesn't look like they use this sample. Here, let me show y'all real quick of what I'm looking at, so y'all can have an understanding. All right, y'all. So this is what I'm looking at, and I'm searching to see if they use the sample, and it doesn't look like it. They didn't. They didn't use that sample. So these are the samples that they used in the study. This is in the supplementary data that they use, and it doesn't look like they use that sample. Here we go. These, so Bronze Age. Where is the what? Bronze Age? Hmm. Bronze Age. Caucasus. Hmm. Uh, there we go. Neolithic. There we go. Right there. So those are the two samples that they use for the Natufians. They use I-1072 and I-1690. Let me see if that's the only ones they use for. So that's the only two samples that they use for the Natufian culture, and they use a lot, obviously, a lot of Neolithic, Levantine, pre-modern Neolithic B culture. I wish they would have put a column for the haplogroups of the Y-DNA and the mtDNA. I think that would have been awesome for them to do, but because I don't have these memorized. So I'm assuming a lot of these are EM78s and T. All right. Let's see. And this is what they use for the Y DNA right here. So the ancestral allele counts was 20 for E1, B1, B1, B2, B2. So that was the best fit. That was the best Y-DNA for this individual. I don't think they have the mtDNA down here. Atom F4 and phenotypes. All right, let's get back to the paper real quick. All right. I'm gonna try to wrap up this paper real quick. Our ancestry in later Egypt, the Nuarat genome extends the genetic record of ancient Egypt beyond previously published data from the third intermediate period, 787 to 544 BCE. We modeled these latter individuals using QP atom with putative sources from a set of 9 populations from North Africa, including Nawarat, West Asia, and Greece, who lived between the Old Kingdom and the Third Intermediate Period, and also included genomes from the Middle Neolithic Morocco and Neolithic Mesopotamia. We can reject all one source models, including one with 100% continuity from Norat to the third intermediate period. P equals 3.00 times 10 power negative 7. Two similar two-source models fit the data, differing only in whether the Nuarat or Middle Neolithic Moroccan individuals are one of the best fit sources in both models. The main source of ancestry is the Bronze Age Levant, for example, 64.5 plus or minus 5.6% in the model, with Middle Neolithic Morocco, P equals 0.32. These results are consistent with the third intermediate period genomes deriving part of their ancestry from local groups related to the Nuarat individual, with evidencing a significant increase in Levantine ancestry. Evidence of gene flow from the Levant by the time of the third intermediate period could be linked to the proposed Bronze Age Canaanite expansion starting at the end of the Middle Kingdom period. On the basis of the archaeological findings, whether this was a gradual assimilation process or a rapid shift, such as the settlement of Hyksos rulers, is still debated. Overall, this period also overlaps with the well-characterized late Bronze Age collapse that witnessed rapid societal and economic upheaval across the Mediterranean region, leading to or being caused by widespread population movement. However, the temporal and the geographical limitations of the current genomic data do not allow firm conclusions to be drawn. We next tested how present-day Egyptian ancestry could be traced to the Bronze Age populations living in North Africa, including the Norat individual, West Asia, Europe, and Sub-Saharan Africa, using QP atom. Despite substantial heterogeneity, most modern-day Egyptian genomes can be modeled as deriving their ancestry from 5 sources related to one, Norat 32.1 to 74.7%. Wow, that's high. To put this in retrospect, I carry like 12 to 15% Taino Native American ancestry. My dad is 25%. So for the modern day Egyptians to carry 32.1 to 74.7 from the early Bronze Age, that's nuts. I'm just gonna break that down for you. That's nuts. That's really nuts that they carry that much admixture from the third, fourth dynasty. That's nuts. Middle Neolithic Morocco, 28.9% to 72.7%. Bronze Age Levant, 11.6% to 57.1%. The 4,500-year-old individual from Ethiopia, Mota, 7.4% to 56%. And approximately 230-year-old individuals from Congo, 4.8% to 52%. Thus, if tracing the ancestor of many present-day Egyptians in our study to the Bronze Age, much of it would be found in groups related to Norat, or alternatively, the sources best represented by Middle Neolithic Morocco, from which approximately 80% of Norat ancestry derives. The second most common ancestry component is related to the Bronze Age Levant, consistent with the ancestry detected in the third intermediate period individuals. Bronze Age Caucasus ancestry is present in a fraction of the present day Egyptians, but is similar to the Bronze Age Levant ancestry. Our models show a more recent arrival of East and West African ancestries in present day Egyptians. Oh my goodness. So it's the same thing that was cited in the 2017 paper. Yeah, it's the same day, same thing. Was the give me a second. I don't want to butcher her name, but it's Verna J. Sharman. It's the same thing, 2017. Ancient Egyptian genome or mummy genome suggests an increase of sub-Saharan African ancestry in post-Roman periods. It's saying the same thing. It's the same exact thing. Oh man. Our model shows a more recent arrival of East and West African ancestries in present-day Egyptians, which has also been previously suggested. Yeah, it's right there. Oh man, so that study is confirmed, y'all. Confirmed. Wow. And dated to 27 generations ago using linkage disequilibrium based admixture dating. Moreover, we note that there is a substantial diversity in ancestry across Egypt. Approximately 20% of present-day Egyptian genomes included here did not fit the model described above. All right, conclusion. Our results demonstrate the feasibility of ancient genome sequencing from the earliest stages of the Egyptian dynastic civilization. One possible explanation for the successful whole genome retrieval is the pot burial, which may have favored a degree of DNA preservation not previously reported in Egypt. This contributes to the road map for future research to obtain ancient DNA from Egypt. Although our analyses are limited to a single Egyptian individual who, on the basis of his relatively high status burial, may not be representative of the general population, our results revealed ancestry linked to earlier North African groups and populations of the Eastern Fertile Crescent. So they need more samples basically, and they had a lot. I think it's like 13 samples if I'm not mistaken. Samples. Trying to remember how many samples. I think it's saying 94. 94 samples. Give me a second. All right. I think it was, man, trying to remember how many samples was there in the original PhD thesis. Was it 94 samples? I don't remember. That seems pretty high. Mhm. Yeah, it was 94 samples. We extracted DNA from 94 sets of remains found in Lower Egypt, Norat, Upper Egypt, Armant, and Nubia, Gabda, dated from the early Neolithic to historical periods. But I don't remember. I thought it was a specific number for the amount that they found in Norat. All right, let me finish this paper up. Dental. So they indicated in our biological affinity analysis of dental traits and cranial matrix of the Norat individual, as well as in previous morphological studies based on full samples. Genetic links with the Eastern Fertile Crescent also mirror previously documented cultural diffusion, such as domesticated plants and animals, writing systems, and pottery wheel, opening up the possibility of some settlement of people in Egypt during one or more of these periods. The Nurat genome also allowed us to investigate the Bronze Age roots of ancestry in later Egypt, highlighting the interplay between population movement and continuity in the region. Further whole genome sequencing of DNA from more individuals will allow for a more detailed and nuanced understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization and its inhabitants, which pretty sure the Egyptian Genome Project, when it gets close to being finished, which I think is going to be in like 2032 or something like that. When is the Egyptian Genome Project set to then be completed? Yeah. Woo, look at there. In the 2032. I was right on the money. Look at there. 5 hours ago, the project plans to analyze the genomes of 200 royal mummies over 5 years in cooperation with the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. The first stage started in March 2021. The project is guaranteed financial support for this first phase until 2027. So 200 ancient Egyptian mummies, whole genome sequencing. Yo, this just got posted. That's what's up. I wonder if this was in collaboration, like they had to wait for these samples to be published. This is brand new. Like I'm just saying this for the first time right now. That's crazy. So there was a press conference attended. Okay. What? I'm gonna have to read this one too? Whoa. This is the individual right here. Okay, so this is what he looked like. This is his phenotype. This is what he looked like. Typical, Typical North African, man. Typical, very North African. It's wow. That's his face. That's what he look. I had no idea that this was published. This is nuts. Go ahead and put this in the. I'll make sure to put this in the description so people can get it. Oh man. The study published today in the journal Nature reveals that 80% of his ancestry is related to ancient people in North Africa and 20% to ancient people in West Asia. The finding significantly reinforces the scientific understanding of human migration out of Africa and the historical intermingling of populations between ancient Egyptians and other civilizations throughout history. Yo, I'm gonna have to make a second video. Man, this is too long. Like, what? Why wasn't this in the study? And there's another paper too I haven't even gone over yet. This one right here. I haven't even gone over this one. The first human genome from ancient Egypt sequence from 4,800-year-old teeth. Oh man. So I'm gonna have to go over this one too. Hold on, let me read this real quick. This is getting interesting down here. The publication of a whole genome data set of an ancient Egyptian constitutes a significant achievement in the field of molecular Egyptology, says Yehia Gad, a geneticist at Egypt's National Research Center in Cairo, who praises the researchers for presenting the provenance of the remains clearly. But he points out that the genome is from one individual and might not fully represent ancient Egypt's gene pool, which was probably a melting pot of different ancestries. For this reason, researchers are eager for more ancient Egyptian genome data, perhaps even from a mummy. Advances in ancient genomics technology and local capacity, Gad supervises an ancient DNA lab at the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization in Cairo. Means it hopefully won't take another 40 years. Yeah, because they got all those samples and we don't really know because they gave us like STRs and whatnot, and it wasn't really meant for using for admixtures analysis. But oh man, I had no idea of this. This paper is brand. It's all new to me. All right, y'all. I'm gonna call it a wrap. It's good to be back. This is my first video in like I think 2 months ago or something like that. But man, please give me a thumbs up, a like. Share this with the pseudos. Share this with your friends. Share this with people that are interested in history. This is how we got to do it. We got to learn as much as possible and continue to learn. Don't be like Soy Quieta and stuck in 1969. Don't do that. This is 2025. You got to move on. You have to learn as much as possible. You have to be like a sponge and soak up as much knowledge as possible. Ain't nobody can take this knowledge away from you. You gotta soak up all this knowledge. That's how you do it. You got to learn all you can. That's what we put on. That's what I believe our whole creation is for. Is to just learn and pass that knowledge on to our children. Just continuing to pass, and the next generation get advance. It's nothing but advancements. That's all it is, advancements. They get this information that you learn your whole life, and you pass that information on to them. Man, what a DNA. And I know a lot of people is waiting. Why hasn't Biblical DNA done the PhD thesis on this? I was waiting for this. That's why. I was waiting for this the whole time. That's what y'all don't know. I was waiting for this. She told me in ResearchGate that she would let me know, or she would publish it on her profile on ResearchGate when the sample is published. But hey, I respect that, and I understood I needed to wait until it was peer reviewed and it was published in a scientific journal. Now that it is, these are the results. There's Biblical DNA. I'm out.